"You've never known a woman like me, Shepherd," said the Shoshone woman he pulled from danger. The sun hung low over the red plains, casting long shadows across the vast stretch of land. The wind howled through the jagged cliffs, sending the dust swirling in every direction. Shepherd had seen these lands for years, but each day felt the same. The rugged frontier planet was a place for survival, no more, no less. He had been tracking cattle for days, alone as usual. The silence suited him just fine. A man didn't need company when there was work to be done. The herd he was guiding needed to be moved before the next storm hit, and Shepherd had never been one to back down from a challenge. He was a man of few words, the kind who kept to himself and avoided trouble. But on this day, trouble found him. Shepherd heard the gunfire before he saw anything. 3 shots rang out in quick succession, and his heart skipped a beat.
A familiar sound in this part of the world. Someone was in trouble.
Without thinking, he spurred his horse onward, urging the animal to run faster. The sounds of shouting and more shots echoed through the valley ahead. He slowed as he crested a rise and saw them, a group of 5 men on horseback, surrounding a lone woman. She was on the ground, struggling to stand, with 2 of the men holding her down. Her face was hidden beneath the long dark hair, but Shepherd could tell from her clothing that she was not of the same world as these men. She wore the clothes of a Shoshone woman, her buckskin dress stained with dirt and blood. The raiders were shouting at her, but the words were lost in the wind. Shepherd didn't need to hear them. He knew the scene too well. These men were after something, either her life or something she carried. It didn't matter. Shepherd had never been one to let injustice stand in his way. He drew his rifle from the saddle and aimed at the nearest raider, a tall man with a scruffy beard. 1 shot, and he went down with a grunt, falling off his horse and disappearing into the dust. The others turned, shocked by the sudden attack. "Get down!" Shepherd shouted, his voice firm. The remaining raiders hesitated, and in that moment, Shepherd fired again. Another man dropped, this time clutching his side as he collapsed to the ground. The other 3 men spurred their horses, retreating back into the wild. Shepherd didn't follow. He had no interest in chasing them down. They would be back, but for now, the woman on the ground needed help. He dismounted, walking toward her slowly. She was still on the ground, breathing heavily, blood dripping from a wound on her arm. Her eyes darted up to him, filled with defiance and fear. There was a fire in those eyes, something he didn't expect. She wasn't the type to beg for mercy, and that made him respect her even more. "You're safe now," Shepherd said, crouching beside her. The woman's lips twisted into a faint smirk. "Safe?" she repeated, her voice rough. "You think you've saved me? I wasn't in danger. I can take care of myself." Shepherd raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. "I'll help you up, but you need to get off the ground. You're hurt." Her gaze softened slightly as she looked at her bleeding arm. She reached for it with her other hand, trying to stop the flow of blood, but her body trembled from the pain. Shepherd extended his hand, and after a long pause, she took it. He pulled her to her feet, her legs unsteady. "I don't need your help," she muttered, though she didn't pull away from him. "I never asked for it." Shepherd glanced at her, noting the way her muscles tensed as if ready to fight again. "You sure? 'Cause I don't think you'd be standing if I hadn't come along." The woman narrowed her eyes at him. "And I'd be fine if you hadn't interfered." She looked him up and down, sizing him up. "You're not from here, are you?" "But I've been around long enough to know when people need help." The woman scoffed. "You think I needed help? You don't know anything about me?" Shepherd watched her for a moment, trying to read her. She was strong. Too strong for someone who seemed to have just been attacked. The way she held herself spoke of more than just survival. She had a wildness about her, a connection to this land and maybe to something else, something deeper. But he didn't ask. He wasn't here to pry. "We can't stay out here," Shepherd said, looking over his shoulder at the barren land. "The raiders won't be gone for long." The woman seemed to consider his words for a moment. "You're right," she muttered. "They'll be back. They always come back." Shepherd glanced at the horizon. A storm was brewing. "We need to move. Can you ride?" The woman gave him a hard look, as if he'd insulted her. "I can ride." She walked toward the horses, her movements stiff but purposeful. Shepherd followed, mounting his own horse and waiting for her to do the same. She swung herself onto the back of the horse, her face set in a mask of determination. But the woman's presence kept him aware of the air around him, her fierce energy filling the silence between them. He had seen this kind of strength before, but it was rare in women, especially one so unyielding. For a while neither of them spoke. The wind picked up, the air turning colder as the sky darkened with clouds. Shepard's horse moved steadily beneath him, while the woman's horse kept pace without hesitation. They rode in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The storm was closing in, but Shepard had learned to trust his instincts. They needed shelter, and fast. As they reached the edge of a small rocky outcrop, the woman finally spoke again. "You're not from here," she said, her voice softer now. "Who are you, really?" Shepard didn't hesitate. "I'm just a man who keeps to himself." "I don't want any trouble." She didn't answer right away, but he could feel her eyes on him. "You think you've seen the worst of this place?" she asked, her tone lighter now but still full of that same edge. "You haven't seen anything yet." Shepard glanced at her, sensing there was more to her story, but he didn't ask. He didn't need to. Everyone had a past they didn't want to share. He had his own, and it was better left buried. The storm was nearly upon them now, and they needed to make shelter fast. Shepard led the way to a small cave hidden in the cliffs, the dark entrance barely visible against the rocks. As they dismounted, the wind howled louder, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Shepard pulled the horses into the cave, making sure they were secure before turning back to the woman. "Looks like we're stuck here for a while," he said, his voice calm despite the storm's fury. The woman nodded, her expression unreadable. For a moment she said nothing, and then she finally spoke again. "You've never known a woman like me, Shepard," she said softly. "But you will." The wind howled through the cave's entrance as Shepard settled down beside the horses. The storm outside was growing more intense by the minute. Dark clouds had swallowed the sky, and the rain was coming in sheets, heavy and unrelenting. The ground outside was turning to mud, and the air felt thick with the promise of more trouble. Shepard glanced over at the Shoshone woman, who had found a place to sit near the back of the cave, her back against the rough stone. Her clothes were wet from the rain, but she didn't seem to mind. Her gaze was focused, distant, as if she were lost in thought. Shepard couldn't help but watch her for a moment. There was something about her, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. She wasn't like anyone he had ever met, strong, proud, and independent. But there was more to her, a depth in her eyes that hinted at a past full of pain and survival. He knew she wasn't just another victim of this harsh world. She was a force in her own right. He finally spoke, breaking the silence. "We'll have to stay here until the storm passes. The raiders will be looking for us. They won't stop." She didn't respond right away. Her eyes shifted to the cave entrance, watching the rain as if it held some kind of answer. Then her gaze turned back to him, and her lips curled into a faint smirk. "They'll come, but it won't be easy for them." Shepard raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean by that?" The woman's smirk faded, replaced by a serious expression. She stood up slowly, wincing slightly from the pain in her arm. "I'm not like the others they've attacked. I've survived worse than this." Shepard didn't doubt it. The way she had fought back when he first found her was proof enough. But there was something else, something more to her than just survival. She had a confidence, an aura of someone who knew things that others didn't. Shepard had a sense that she wasn't telling him everything. But it wasn't the time to ask. "You're not afraid of them, are you?" Shepard asked, his voice low. The woman shook her head. "Fear's not something you can afford out here. You either fight or you die." "And I've been fighting for a long time." Shepard didn't press the matter. He could see that she wasn't the type to talk about her past easily, and he wasn't interested in pushing her. They both had their own stories that were better left untold for now. They had a bigger problem on their hands. The storm raged outside, and the wind picked up, howling through the cave. Shepard moved to secure the horses, making sure they were sheltered from the rain. He returned to the cave's center, where the woman was sitting, her expression unreadable. She had pulled out a small knife and was cleaning the wound on her arm, her movements quick and precise. Shepard watched her for a moment, then spoke again. "You're not just any woman, are you? You're something different. I can see it in the way you carry yourself. You've got a strength that's not common around here." She didn't meet his eyes at first. Instead, she continued tending to her wound, but there was a change in her posture. She straightened as if she were considering his words carefully. "I told you before," she said quietly. "I'm Shoshone. My people, we've lived on these lands for longer than most can remember.
We know how to survive. We know how to protect what's ours."
Shepard nodded, intrigued. He had heard of the Shoshone, but not much. They were a group of nomads who roamed the wildlands, surviving on their knowledge of the terrain and the creatures that inhabited it. He had always respected their ways, though he had never met one of their people before. "I'm not from here," Shepard admitted. "I came to these lands years ago, looking for something, I'm not sure what. But I've learned to live with it. This place doesn't scare me. Not much does." The woman's gaze flickered toward him, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "It's not about being scared," she said, her voice softer now. "It's about knowing what you're up against. And you're right. This place doesn't scare me either. But the people out there," she gestured toward the cave entrance where the storm raged. "They've forgotten what it means to fight for survival. They've forgotten what it means to respect the land." Shepard stayed silent for a moment. The wind howled louder, but there was a calm in her words, a certainty that was impossible to ignore. The raiders they had encountered weren't just after her. They were after something else, something bigger. Shepard felt it in his gut. "We should rest," Shepard suggested, his voice low. "We need to be ready when they come." The woman didn't argue. She settled down against the wall of the cave, her eyes closing for a moment as she rested. Shepard sat nearby, his thoughts running in different directions. He couldn't help but think about the connection he felt with her. There was something about her that made him want to protect her, but at the same time he knew she was capable of taking care of herself. She was a fighter, in every sense of the word. As the storm raged on, Shepard allowed himself a moment of rest. His body ached from the long days on the trail, but his mind wouldn't allow him to sleep. The wind howled louder outside, as if the storm were alive, pushing against the world with everything it had. A sound in the distance, faint at first, but growing louder. A low rumble. The raiders were coming. "They're here," the woman said, her voice calm and steady. Shepard's eyes snapped open. He stood up quickly, reaching for his rifle. The woman had already retrieved her knife, her gaze fixed on the cave entrance. "Are you ready?" Shepard asked. She gave him a glance, and for the first time, he saw a hint of a smile on her lips. Always. The raiders were close now. They had underestimated the woman. Big mistake. Shepard wasn't going to let them make the same mistake twice. The storm outside was relentless, but Shepard's focus had shifted entirely to the sound of approaching footsteps. They weren't the heavy boots of the raiders. They were lighter, quicker. The woman's warning echoed in his mind. They're not the only threat. He glanced at her, seeing the calmness in her eyes as she stood beside him. She was ready, just like she said. The night was dark, and the wind howled around the cave's entrance, but something about the woman told Shepard that she knew what was coming. "They're closer," Shepard said quietly, his hand gripping the rifle tightly. The cave was their temporary shelter, but it wasn't a place of safety anymore. The raiders weren't the only ones hunting them. "They've been tracking us," the woman, Kaya, replied softly. "They don't know who I am, but they'll learn soon enough." Shepard looked at her, puzzled by her cryptic words. He had seen a woman fight before, but something in the way Kaya spoke made him think there was much more to her than just survival. He had known survivalists, but Kaya was something else. She wasn't just a woman of the land. She was a part of it. Every time she spoke, it was like the earth itself was speaking through her. "We need to move," Shepard said, his voice firm. The raiders would be coming for them, but so would the other threat, the ancient power that Kaya seemed to be connected to. He could feel it deep in his bones. Kaya nodded, her expression unreadable. "You're right," she said. She took a few steps toward the cave's entrance, her movements fluid and confident. Shepard followed her, and they both stepped out into the night, the storm raging around them. The wind tugged at their clothes, but neither of them faltered. Kaya's eyes were sharp, scanning the terrain as if she were reading the land itself. Shepard had learned to trust his instincts over the years, but Kaya seemed to trust the land more than anything else. As they moved, Shepard couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The wind carried something else with it, something that felt different from the usual danger of the frontier. It was as if the land itself was alive, and it didn't like intruders. "Do you feel it?" Shepard asked, his voice low. "Something's off." Kaya didn't answer right away. She moved silently through the darkness, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the surroundings. Finally, she spoke. "It's the land," she said quietly. "It's calling me." Shepard stopped in his tracks, surprised. "The land?" "You won't understand," she said, "but I have to answer it." Before he could say anything more, a low rumbling sound filled the air, growing louder. Shepard's heart raced, and he instinctively grabbed Kaya's arm, pulling her close. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, and the sky above them seemed to shift. The storm wasn't just a storm. It was a warning. Kaya pulled away from him gently, her eyes now alight with an intensity that sent a chill down Shepard's spine. "It's too late," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "They've found us." From the darkness ahead, the raiders emerged, riding on horseback, their silhouettes barely visible against the storm. They had arrived faster than Shepard had anticipated, but there was something different about them now. They didn't look like the same group he had seen before. There was a new energy in the air, a palpable sense of danger that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The raiders dismounted slowly, their faces obscured by the shadows. But there was no mistaking the leader. He was the same one who had been in charge of the group that attacked them earlier. He stood tall, his eyes cold as he sized up Shepard and Kaya. "You think you can run from us?" the leader sneered, his voice carrying through the storm. "You've made a grave mistake, Shoshone woman." She stood tall, her expression unwavering. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she said quietly, but her voice was full of authority. The raiders laughed, but the sound was hollow, as if they didn't believe her. The leader motioned for his men to advance, but before they could take another step, Kaya raised her hand. A strange calm filled the air, and the storm seemed to pause for a moment. Shepard could feel it now. The land was responding to her. He could see it in the way the ground beneath their feet shifted, as if the earth itself were alive and aware. The air grew thick with tension, and the raiders faltered. The leader scowled. "What are you doing?" Kaya's eyes met Shepard's, and for the first time he saw something different in her gaze, something ancient. "This is my land," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "and it doesn't take kindly to trespassers." The ground rumbled again, this time louder, more forceful. Shepard felt the power in the air, like the earth itself was waking up. The raiders took a step back, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. Before anyone could move, Kaya raised her hand, and the storm surged forward like a living thing. The wind whipped through the trees, the rain falling in sheets, and the earth beneath the raiders' feet seemed to shift and tremble. The leader stumbled, his footing lost as the land itself rose against him. Kaya's voice was low and steady, carrying over the storm. "Leave. Now." The raiders hesitated, but the power of the land was undeniable. One by one they turned and fled, the leader glaring at Kaya as he retreated. Shepard stood still, watching in awe as the storm faded and the land returned to its calm state. When the last of the raiders disappeared into the night, Kaya lowered her hand, her expression calm once more. "They won't return," she said. Shepard was speechless. He had seen many things in his life, but nothing like this. He had known that Kaya was no ordinary woman, but now he understood just how deep her connection to the land ran. She wasn't just fighting for survival, she was one with the land itself. "You," Shepard began, but the words felt inadequate. "You're not just a survivor, are you?" Kaya looked at him, her eyes softening. "No," she said quietly. "I'm something more." The storm had passed, and the night was still once more. But for Shepard, everything had changed. He had always thought of himself as a man of the land, but now he saw that the land had a much deeper connection to those who truly understood it. Kaya wasn't just a fighter, she was the keeper of something ancient and powerful, something that he had yet to fully understand, but he was willing to learn. The first light of dawn crept through the storm clouds, casting an eerie glow over the land. The battle with the raiders had ended, and the wind had finally quieted. The land, once tense with the anger of the storm, now lay still, almost peaceful. Shepard stood at the edge of the cave, his eyes scanning the horizon. The night had been long, but now there was an unfamiliar silence. Kaya stood beside him, her presence like a force of nature itself. She hadn't spoken much after the raiders had retreated, but there was a calm in the way she moved, the way she observed the world around her. It was as if she could see things others couldn't. Shepard couldn't help but wonder what was running through her mind. "Do you think they'll come back?" Shepard asked, his voice breaking the silence. Kaya didn't look at him right away. Her eyes were on the horizon, where the land met the sky. She seemed to be listening to something, as if the earth itself was speaking to her. After a long pause, she finally answered, "No, they've seen what I can do. They'll stay away." She turned her head to meet his gaze, and there was a quiet strength in her eyes. "But the land, it's always calling me. I have to go to it." Shepard felt a shiver run down his spine at the mention of the land. He had seen Kaya connect with it in ways that didn't make sense. The storm, the power she had summoned, it wasn't something he understood, but he couldn't deny what he had seen. Kaya wasn't just a woman, she was part of the land, a part of something ancient and alive. "You're not going to leave, are you?" Shepard asked quietly. Kaya's lips curled into a soft smile. "No, I'm not leaving. But the land, it calls to me, Shepard. It's not something I can ignore." Shepard nodded, though he didn't fully understand. He had spent years wandering the frontier, learning to live off the land, but he had never felt it like she did. He had never felt the land speak to him. "You've already done more than enough," Shepard said. "I never asked for any of this. I was just trying to survive." Kaya stepped closer to him, her eyes still filled with that same fire. "Survival isn't just about living through the day, Shepard. It's about knowing who you are, knowing where you belong." Shepard looked at her, seeing something in her eyes that made him wonder if he had ever truly understood what survival meant. Maybe he had spent so much time running, so much time hiding from the world, that he had forgotten what it meant to truly belong somewhere. He glanced at the horses, tethered nearby, and then back at the land stretching out before them. He had always thought of this place as a vast, empty wilderness, but now, with Kaya beside him, he was starting to see it differently. It wasn't just land, it was a home, a living thing that breathed and spoke, and Kaya, in her quiet way, was its voice. "I'm not sure I belong here," Shepard said after a long pause. Kaya tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Maybe you don't belong here yet," she said softly. "But you can, if you're willing to listen." The words hung in the air between them. Shepard felt a stirring inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Maybe she was right. Maybe he had been running from something deeper than the world around him. Maybe he had been running from himself. Kaya turned away, her gaze returning to the distance. "The land has always been here," she said, almost to herself. "But we forget it sometimes. We forget that it doesn't need us. We need it." Shepard followed her gaze, seeing only the rolling hills and the distant mountains. But for the first time, he saw something more. Something alive. The land wasn't just a backdrop to his life. It was a part of it. And he had been blind to that. "I'm not sure I can ever understand what you're talking about," Shepard said, his voice filled with uncertainty. Kaya smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "You don't have to understand. You just have to feel it. You'll know when it happens. You'll know when you're ready." She turned back to him, her eyes meeting his in the quiet morning light. "I'm not leaving you, Shepard. But I need to go. There's something I have to do." Shepard felt a wave of unease wash over him. He had never been one to trust easily, but with Kaya, he felt like he had found something he could rely on.
He didn't want her to leave. He didn't want to be alone again.
"Where will you go?" Shepard asked, his voice soft. Kaya's expression softened, and for the first time, Shepard saw a flicker of something vulnerable in her eyes. "I don't know. The land will guide me. It always has." She turned away from him then, her movements graceful and deliberate. Shepard watched her, his heart heavy with the knowledge that she was about to leave, even if just for a little while. Kaya paused at the edge of the cave and turned back to look at him. "You're not alone, Shepard," she said, her voice steady. "You never have been. You just have to open your eyes." With that, she walked away, disappearing into the distance, her figure swallowed by the land. Shepard stood there, his gaze fixed on where she had been, the words echoing in his mind. He wasn't alone. He hadn't been alone for a long time. The sun rose higher in the sky, casting its light over the land, and Shepard stood there, listening. For the first time, he thought he might actually be hearing something. A whisper, faint at first, but growing louder. The land was calling him, too.